Panamanian law enforcement officers searched offices of a C.K. Hutchison company at the Panama Canal. The government explains the replacement for the nightly light show above Victoria Harbour. And delivery of a punchai meal by drones. Good evening and welcome to TVB News. Panamanian law enforcement officers reportedly searched offices of a subsidiary of C.K. Hutchison after local authorities forcefully took over two ports on either end of the Panama Canal operated by the company. C.K. Hutchison has issued a statement saying Panama's takeover is not in line with the law that approved its concession contract. Jenny Jo reports.
On Thursday, members of Panama's investigative police were seen at a parking lot outside the office of the Panama Ports Company. Dozens of paper boxes believed to be containing documents were loaded onto police vans during the raid. Local media reports say the operation was tied to the Panama Maritime Authority's request for documents from Panama Ports Company, a subsidiary of Hong Kong conglomerate C.K. Hutchison. Authorities said PPC failed to provide them with intact documents, adding the independent investigation was conducted exclusively by the Public Ministry of Panama in the exercise of its legal powers. The Panamanian government recently said that its top court had ruled a concession held by the company to operate two terminals at the Panama Canal was unconstitutional and cancelled the contract. Facilities of the two ports were shortly occupied by Panama's Maritime Authority under executive decree on grounds of urgent social interest. On Thursday, C.K. Hutchison said PPC has obtained legal opinion that relevant ruling, executive decree and corresponding actions by the Panamanian government are inconsistent with the relevant legal framework and the law that approved its concession contract. C.K. Hutchison's board of directors strongly opposed Panama's move. An earlier statement issued by C.K. Hutchison pointed to the forced entry of Panamanian government representatives into two container terminals run by PPC. It also called Panama's takeover of the terminals illegal.
In
Beijing, the foreign ministry reiterated that China will firmly safeguard its enterprise's legitimate rights and interests. Danny Zhou, TVB News.
The 2026-27 budget proposed replacing the decades-old A Symphony of Lights with a brand new show. Secretary for Culture, Sports and Tourism, Rosanna Law, revealed that the government is exploring different iconic spots, such as the Peak, with a target to launch in the second half of this year. Samantha Lee has more.
Following the success of last year's immersive light show in Central, the Hong Kong Tourism Board will launch a series of themed light festivals across various locations at different times. This will replace a symphony of lights on Victoria Harbour, introduced in 2004. Secretary for Culture, Sports and Tourism Rosanna Law said the daily light show may not be able to meet the expectations of many frequent visitors. However, the authorities are considering a farewell performance for a Symphony of Lights. The brand new light show is expected to debut in the second half of this year. While the performance will not be staged every night, this will align with festival periods, such as the Mid-Autumn Festival and Halloween, in a bid to encourage return trips. Besides Central, the Tourism Board is looking into several signature attractions, such as the Peak, to increase tourism appeal.
If you are a repeated visitor, you might not necessarily go for the Peak a second time. But if we have a new light festival being offered there with thematic differences around the year, then maybe you think you have to come again and visit the Peak again.
The budget also places an emphasis on the city's sports development, with an injection of $1.2 billion into the sports portion of the Arts and Sports Development Fund. Law said a review of the development program for team sports will be conducted after the Nagoya Asian Games in September. A revised funding framework would take effect in April next year. Before that, the government is ramping up support for various sports associations.
Because this is an Asian Game preparation period, we will encourage teams to go out to join more games, to participate in more games, even if they think they might not necessarily be able to go very far or win a medal.
In addition, subsidies for hosting international mega events in Hong Kong will be increased by 50% in the next round of application. Samantha Lee, TVB News.
The budget noted the need to expand trials for the low-altitude economy, such as cross-border as well as passenger trials, with the government currently holding talks on details of the measure with their mainland counterparts. This as an online delivery platform recently began its first drone delivery service for elderly residents. At a Lunar New Year celebration at Tin Kok Chun in Tai Po, revelers eagerly waited for the arrival of their pun choi delivered by a drone that traveled from Science Park. The service marked the first drone route traveling between Science Park and the Tai Po village, aimed at serving the local elderly community. Organized by the Hong Kong Children and Youth Services, the delivery route initially began from Tai Po's urban center before social services staff would personally deliver the dishes to senior villagers. With the help of drones, the delivery time has now been reduced by 10 minutes from its original half-an-hour period. The manager of the drone delivery service said the current plan is to deliver some 30 dishes per day, consisting of both lunch and dinner, serving up to 15 elderly residents. The company also aims to expand in other directions in the future, such as delivering medicine and other emergency items. The budget suggested raising the borrowing ceiling of two bond programs from the current $700 billion to $900 billion. Addressing concerns about debt repayment, Financial Secretary Paul Chan said the increased borrowing is for mega projects like the Northern Metropolis, which is expected to drive growth and yield returns. Samantha Lee tells us more.
Following the unveiling of the latest budget, Financial Secretary Paul Chan took calls from the public on a radio program. One of the callers expressed concerns over the high level of borrowing by asking the finance chief how the government could guarantee these debts would not become a burden for future generations as new debts cover for old debts.
How confident are you that the economic returns of the investments can repay these $900 billion bonds? And how confident are you that the future generation or future governments would not issue bonds to cover these old bonds?
In terms of investment in the Northern Metropolis, at the moment we are trying to expedite it, because if we are able to expedite it in terms of land formation, infrastructure provision, that will help us quickly settle in the various business enterprises, tech enterprises, manufacturing enterprises that we are going to bring in. When these companies set up their operation, they will contribute to my tax income, to our employment, to our GDP. It is not just for the current few years, but it will be a major engine of growth for Hong Kong in the next 20 years.
Another caller pointed to the city's shrinking birth rate as he asked for the reasons for cutting expenditures on education, social welfare and health care.
Hong Kong's known to have one of the lowest childbirth rates in the world. And yet, to make a sustainable growth of a city, you need to have that replacement cycle. You need to have children. Despite that, you've decided to cut subsidies to early childhood education. Can I just ask what's the rationale behind that?
This year, in terms of personal allowances, child allowances, we increased the deduction quite a bit. In terms of this allowance, we increased the amount. So this will be for the long term to the personal allowances deductions. In fact, for a family with 2 children, the additional disposable income in terms of reduction in tax is about slightly over $10,000. So I think that would also benefit more people.
Samantha Lee, TVB News.
The government has earmarked $100 million aimed at attracting large-scale international exhibitions to Hong Kong. Secretary for Commerce and Economic Development, Algernon Yao, said he hopes the measure can help promote Hong Kong exhibitions as a brand. According to the Hong Kong Tourism Board's website, the city has been hosting large-scale exhibitions or conferences almost every week this year. In order to boost the development of Hong Kong exhibitions, the budget suggested earmarking $100 million for attracting international exhibitions that offer new elements to Hong Kong. Secretary for Commerce and Economic Development Algernon Yao noted venues such as Asia World Expo have already expanded their facilities, adding that the city could incorporate themes such as robotics, cars, and yachts in upcoming exhibitions. The budget also raised the prospect of using financial and maritime development to integrate into the nation's maritime strategic development. Speaking about the recently launched port community system, Secretary for Transport and Logistics Mabel Chan said the government is already working with the Hong Kong Monetary Authority and the Hong Kong International Airport's cargo data platform to promote the development of supply chain finance. Worldwide use of Chinese artificial intelligence models have for the first time surpassed that of U.S. models, as rankings show 4 of the top 5 models by usage volume are from China. Reports say that the reason why Chinese models win over the global market is because they have advantages in performance and cost. Danny Zhou has more.
Data from the world's largest AI model integrated platform, OpenRouter, indicated a jump in global usage of Chinese AI models in the period from last Monday through Sunday, outperforming US models for the very first time. 4 of the top 5 are from China, including Shanghai-based Minimax M2.5, Kimi K2.5 by Moonshot AI, GLM5 by Z.AI, as well as DeepSeek V3.2. Among them, Minimax M2.5, launched on the 13th of this month, topped the list of the most popular AI models by usage last week. Mainland media reported that OpenRouter converged hundreds of large language models from around the world, including those developed by Google and DeepSeek. While US users account for approximately 40% of the platform's more than 5 million users worldwide, the proportion of users from China is less than 10%. Reports pointed out that the OpenRouter data reflects the popularity and competitiveness of AI models' practical use. Danny Zhou, TVB News.
And still ahead, updates on when can the Taipei fire victims go back to their homes to collect personal belongings. The Legislative Council holds its annual Lunar New Year luncheon. And Hillary Clinton tells members of U.S. Congress she had no knowledge of Jeffrey Epstein's crimes. Welcome back. Wrongful court residents may return in batches in 2 months' time. This as the Deputy Chief Secretary for Administration, Warren Shuk, noted that with elevators out of service, residents will need to climb the stairs and should only do so if they're physically capable. Samantha Lee has the details.
3 months after the tragic blaze, a group of Wentworth Court residents signed a petition, hoping to return to the buildings to retrieve their belongings. While the Deputy Chief Secretary for Administration, Warren Shuk, deemed the request reasonable, he warned that the site remains in a state of ruin. He estimated that it would take 2 months to complete preparations. Details of the arrangement will be announced next month. He said the safety of residents is the government's top priority, so structural reinforcement and the cordoning off of dangerous areas have to be done before letting residents in. Currently, the buildings have no water, electricity, or working elevators, so residents will have to walk the stairs. He said the demanding journey and the poor conditions of the building do not allow for the movement of large pieces of furniture. He advised residents to focus on items that carry great personal importance. Chuck did not say exactly whether more than 1 person per household could return or multiple visits would be allowed. He believed it is unfit for many people to enter at once. However, he promised to strive for a balance between meeting residents' need and safety. Samantha Lee, TVB News.
The Legislative Council held its annual Lunar New Year luncheon today. There was a record turnout of more than 200 attendees. Chief Executive John Lee joined the festive gathering with senior officials. During her speech, LegCo President Starry Lee cited Director of Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office Xia Baolong and noted that Hong Kong is in a critical period of opening new chapters and achieving new milestones. She stressed that under an executive-led system, positive interaction between the executive and legislative branches is essential for effective governance. 9 residential land plots will be put on sale in the coming fiscal year, providing a total of 6,650 flats. Together with private and MTR projects, this year will see some 22,000 units, with most of them in the new territories. The government will sell 9 residential sites in 2026 to 27. 7 are located in the new territories. 3 land parcels in the Hongshui-Q Hachu New Development Area will provide 3,120 units. They also include 2 sites in Shekmun, 1 in Saikong, and another in Tongcheng. On Hong Kong Island, a plot at Cape Road in Stanley is expected to provide 640 units. At least 3 people were injured after a wild boar charged into the Wu Kai Sha MTR station and a nearby housing estate. Footage provided by a viewer showed a man sitting on the ground suspected to have been injured by the wild boar. He suffered leg injuries with bloodstains found on site. More bloodstains were found inside nearby a shopping mall. Police officers tried to surround the animal at the Lake Silver housing estate, but the boar managed to break their shield formation and escape. Veterinarians are on standby and already prepared tranquilizers to subdue the animal. Authorities said they received reports at 5 p.m. of a wild boar charging into the Wu Kai Sha MTR station before knocking over an elderly man. 2 women claim to have suffered injuries. Former U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton told members of Congress she had no knowledge of Jeffrey Epstein's crimes, starting off 2 days of depositions that will also include former U.S. President Bill Clinton. Dan Rao tells us more.
Former U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton said in an opening statement she shared on social media, "I had no idea about their criminal activities. I do not recall ever encountering Mr. Epstein." She said, "Like every decent person, I have been horrified by what we have learned about Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell's crimes." The closed-door deposition concluded Thursday after over 6 hours of Hillary Clinton giving an answer to every question. The depositions in the Clintons' hometown of Chappaqua, north of New York City, come after months of tense back and forth between the former Democratic first couple and the Republican-controlled House Oversight Committee, as it investigates Jeffrey Epstein, who killed himself in a New York jail cell in 2019 while waiting trial. It will be the first time that a former U.S. president has been forced to testify before Congress. Yet the demand for a reckoning of Epstein's abuse of underage girls has become a near unstoppable force on Capitol Hill and beyond. The Clintons agreed to testify after their offers of sworn statements were rebuffed by the oversight panel, and its chairman threatened criminal contempt of Congress charges against them. Clinton has previously said her husband flew with Epstein for charitable trips, but that she did not recall ever meeting Epstein. She had also interacted with Maxwell, Epstein's former girlfriend and confidant, at conferences hosted by the Clinton Foundation. Maxwell, a British socialite, also attended the 2010 wedding of their daughter, Chelsea Clinton. As she exited the event center where the deposition was held, Hillary Clinton told reporters Maxwell had come to the wedding as a guest of someone else. She also said the deposition should have been done in public and not behind closed doors.
I answered every one of their questions as fully as I could, based on what I knew. It was disappointing that they refused to hold a public hearing, so I wouldn't have to be out here characterizing it for you. You could have seen it for yourself. We had asked for that. We think it would have been better for the committee and its efforts to gather whatever information they are seeking.
Bill Clinton, however, has emerged as a top target for Republicans amid the political struggle over who receives the most scrutiny for their ties to Epstein. Several photos of the former U.S. president were included in the first tranche of Epstein files released. Clinton has not been accused of wrongdoing in his relationship with Epstein. General TV News.
Pakistan said it considers itself in an open war with neighboring Afghanistan, and the worst escalation of violence since a Qatar-mediated ceasefire in October. The comments by Pakistani Defense Minister Khwaja Mohammad Asif came after Afghanistan launched a cross-border retaliatory attack on Pakistan overnight that saw Islamabad hit back with airstrikes on Kabul. Asif said Pakistan had hoped for peace in Afghanistan after the withdrawal of NATO forces in 2021 and expected the Taliban, which seized power in the country, to focus on the welfare of the Afghan people and regional stability. Instead, he said the Taliban had turned Afghanistan into a colony of India. Afghanistan said that its military launched its attack in retaliation for deadly Pakistani airstrikes on Afghan border areas Sunday. Iran and the United States held hours of indirect negotiations on Thursday over Tehran's nuclear program, but walked away without a deal. Dan Rao has details.
Oman's Foreign Minister Badr al-Busaidi, who mediated the talks in Geneva, said there had been significant progress in the negotiation without elaborating. Al-Busaidi said technical talks involving lower-level representatives would continue next week in Vienna, the home of the International Atomic Energy Agency. During an interval in the talks, Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Ismail Bagay said the Iranians felt there were constructive proposals offered on both nuclear issues and sanctions relief. But just before the talks ended, Iranian state television reported Tehran was determined to continue enriching uranium, rejected proposals to transfer it abroad, and sought the lifting of international sanctions. This in an indication Iran was not prepared to meet US President Donald Trump's demands. The two sides held multiple rounds of talks last year that collapsed when Israel launched a 12-day war against Iran in June, and the US carried out heavy strikes on its nuclear sites, leaving at least part of Iran's nuclear program in ruins. US President Trump wants Iran to completely halt its enrichment of uranium, as well as roll back both its long-range missile program and its support of regional armed groups. Iran says it will only discuss nuclear issues and maintains its atomic program is for entirely peaceful purposes. Iran has said it hasn't enriched since June, but it has blocked IAEA inspectors from visiting the sites America bombed. If the talks fail, uncertainty hangs over the timing of any possible US attack on Iran. If the aim of potential military action is to pressure Iran to make concessions in nuclear negotiations, it's not clear whether limited strikes would work. If the goal is to remove Iran's leaders, that will likely commit the US to a larger, longer military campaign. If attacked, Tehran could retaliate against the American allied nations of the Persian Gulf or Israel. TV News.
And that's the news. Thanks for watching.